Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to plunge into some of the most critical shifts happening across our globe right now. The world is, well, it's undeniably in flux, isn't it?
It really is.
We're watching this incredible convergence. You've got economic pressures, climate realities, technology moving so fast, and this dramatic reordering of global power.
Yeah, it's like this multi-dimensional chess game playing out. And the surprising thing is how interconnected it all is.
Exactly. Moves that seem separate, but they ripple across the board.
Absolutely. And what's truly striking is how issues that seem distinct, a nation's budget, clean energy's future, AI, geopolitical blocks, even things like African integration, they're all part of the same big story.
Right. Shaping the future we're all stepping into. So our mission today, as always, is to take this stack of really compelling sources you've shared with us, everything from U.S. political analysis, detailed BRICS reports, climate deregulation insights, AI governance, African integration, and boil it down. We want to pull out the essential nuggets, the surprising facts, basically give you, the listener, a shortcut to being truly well-informed about these massive forces reshaping our world right now.
Okay. Where should we start?
Well, to really grasp the global dynamic, maybe let's first zoom in on a pretty significant domestic challenge, specifically the immediate economic reality facing the U.S. in 2025.
Okay.
Sources are calling this a year of consequential fiscal policy decisions, as this term floating around, an impending fiscal cliff.
Yeah, and the numbers are, well, they're pretty startling. One estimate suggests a staggering $5 trillion in new debt if current policies just roll forward.
$5 trillion, that's
huge. And it points to a path that's just not sustainable. Projections are saying the country could be running out of fiscal space in the next 15 years.
Wow. So to avoid what they're calling a debt spiral, what needs to happen?
Well, the primary deficit, basically the gap for interest payments, needs a reduction of about $2.1 trillion over the next decade. That's the scale of the adjustment needed.
Okay, 2.1 trillion. That's a massive challenge. So what exactly makes up this 2025 fiscal cliff? What are the components?
It's really a convergence of several critical deadlines hitting around the same time.
Okay.
You've got the debt limit, for instance. That'll need to be raised possibly as early as June 2025.
Right. That always causes some political drama.
Always. Then, by the end of 2025, key parts of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expire. Which essentially means a pretty large tax increase for many individuals and businesses if Congress doesn't act.
Got it. What else?
Congress also needs to set new spending caps, the discretionary ones, for fiscal year 2026 and beyond. And they still need to finish the regular budget process, the appropriations, for FY 2025.
So these big financial frameworks.
Yeah.
But it's not just that, is it? There are other things hitting people more directly.
Absolutely. The Farm Bill needs reauthorizing. That affects things like food stamps, SMP, and farm subsidies. Critical programs. Then, the expanded Obamacare subsidies, the ones helping people afford health insurance premiums, they expire at the end of 2025, too.
So that impacts healthcare costs for millions.
Directly. And one more layer. The state and local funding boost from the COVID pandemic response is winding down, so that adds another financial pressure point across the country.
So this isn't just like some dry accounting exercise. This is the actual battleground for major political fights, right? How does this fiscal crunch line up with the incoming administration's plans?
It lines up directly and complicates things significantly. This fiscal reality is deeply intertwined with their ambitious legislative agenda, especially what's being called the sweeping Trump policy bill.
Okay.
Now, the proposed strategy from the incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson is this two-step approach.
Right, I read about this. Focus on border and energy first.
Exactly. Aiming for passage within the first 30 days.
Yeah.
Then tackle tax reform later.
But is everyone on board with that plan? Even within the Republican Party, I heard there were some immediate disagreements.
You heard right. There are immediate internal divisions. Key House committee chairs like Jody Arrington from Budget and Jason Smith from Ways and Means have already voiced concerns.
Why? What's the issue?
Well, the tax writers especially had kind of hoped that including border and energy in one package with tax would help sweeten the pot.
Make it easier to get the whole thing passed.
Precisely. Get skeptical lawmakers on board. Plus, you've got the whole complexity of budget reconciliation.
That special process with the simple majority vote.
Yeah, but it has really strict rules about what can be included. It has to be primarily budget related.
Yeah.
And the Senate parliamentarian, who's like the referee.
The ultimate rule keeper.
Right. That role could make it really difficult to include broad immigration changes if they don't have that direct budget impact.
So, okay, we've got these deadlines, these internal party disagreements, complex procedures.
Yeah.
What's the bottom line here for you, the listener? Why should they care about these Capitol Hill debates?
Well, look, this battle over the fiscal cliff isn't just about balancing the books. It actually reveals some deep fissures, even within the incoming administration's own party.
Hmm.
Their ability to actually govern and get their agenda done could be challenged right from day one. And ultimately, these decisions, they directly impact everything from government services you rely on, maybe your tax bill, and just the overall stability of the U.S. economy. It's pretty fundamental.
Okay, fundamental indeed. From that high-stakes game in Washington, let's shift to another critical area, climate.
Okay.
Because here we see this really fascinating tension. On one side, potential federal deregulation, but on the other, this powerful market momentum that seems almost unstoppable.
That's a great way to put it.
For example, the Trump administration has proposed revoking the 2009 EPA endangerment finding. What is that exactly?
So that finding is incredibly important. It's basically the EPA's scientific and legal determination that greenhouse gases pose a significant threat to public health and welfare.
And that matters because
Because it provides the legal foundation for the EPA's authority under the Clean Air Act to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Repealing it, that would genuinely be the largest deregulation action in the history of America.
wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so not just symbolic. What would the practical consequences be?
Immense. It would fundamentally undermine the federal government's ability to regulate these emissions. It could effectively rescind existing rules like fuel efficiency standards for cars or power plant regulations.
Right.
And maybe just as importantly, it would block future national efforts to control greenhouse gases. It essentially pushes all that responsibility down to individual states.
Creating a real patchwork system.
Exactly, a fragmented national response.
So what's the administration's argument for doing this, and what kind of pushback are they getting?
Well, the administration claims there's insufficient reliable information to back up the original finding. Their stated focus is prioritizing energy dominance and economic growth.
Okay. And the opposition?
Strong opposition from environmental groups, public health advocates, even former EPA leaders. They're warning about dire consequences for public health, for climate change impacts, and everyone expects this to trigger extensive legal challenges. This fight is far from over.
Right. But here's the twist you mentioned. Despite these potential policy headwinds from Washington, renewable energy seems to be doing remarkably well. The market isn't always waiting for policy, is it?
It really isn't. It's shown, as the sources say, remarkable resilience. Take the Inflation Reduction Act, for example. That's been a huge catalyst. Quarterly investments in clean energy manufacturing tripled to about $14 billion in Q1 2025 alone.
$14 billion in one quarter.
Yeah. And solar and wind installations are still going strong, largely because the technology costs keep coming down and private capital is flowing in.
Okay, so renewables are resilient. But I've also heard about specific challenges for electric vehicles, EVs.
Yes, the EV sector is more directly tied to some of these policy shifts. The Biden-era clean car standards are definitely under scrutiny. Federal incentives for buying EVs, they could face reversal.
Which creates.
Well, it creates regulatory uncertainty and shifting consumer demand. Automakers are basically trying to navigate a much more volatile landscape for EVs right now.
Okay, and this leads to another key dynamic.
Mhm.
With potential federal leadership pulling back, states are stepping up.
That's a really key development. California is the classic example, right? They've historically had the power to set stricter vehicle emission standards than the federal government.
And they're using it.
Yes. The governor has directed their air quality board to develop even more stringent rules, specifically in response to potential federal rollbacks.
And it's not just California. Some states are feeling the impacts of climate change so directly it's forcing their hand.
Nevada is a pretty stark example here. It ranks among the worst states for ozone and particle pollution. And get this. In 2024, Southern Nevada recorded 526 heat-related fatalities. That tragically surpassed both homicides and traffic deaths in the area that year.
That's incredible.
And you add rising wildfire risks. It disproportionately hits vulnerable populations. So states like Nevada, they are forming coalitions, trying to fill gaps left by federal deregulation, pushing for regional solutions.
So, wrapping this climate section up,
Yeah.
What does this tension mean for you, the listener? Federal policy pulling back, but market forces and states pushing forward.
It highlights this fragmented, almost bottom-up path for the energy transition. What's truly remarkable is that even with federal efforts to dial back climate policy, These market forces, these state actions, they're creating this powerful momentum.
Almost in spite of Washington.
Almost in spite of Washington. And that could keep propelling the energy transition forward, directly impacting your health, your environment, doesn't matter where you live.
Okay, from the ground up to the digital realm. Let's transition now to the critical and truly borderless challenge of governing artificial intelligence.
AI governance, yeah. Huge topic.
And this brings us to this emerging concept, digital sovereignty. What does that mean?
Essentially, it's a nation's ability to control its own digital destiny. That includes the whole AI supply chain, the data, the hardware, the software, everything.
Okay, and what's fascinating here is how different global powers are taking wildly different approaches.
Totally divergent philosophies. And it's already leading to what some call a bifurcation of digital ecosystems. Different digital worlds are emerging.
Okay, let's break that down. Let's start with Europe. They're described as having a holistic approach.
Right. The EU has really been a pioneer here. Think about GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. That set a global benchmark for data privacy. Now they've got the groundbreaking EU AI Act. It uses a risk-based approach. Some things are just banned outright unacceptable risks, like social credit scoring by governments or real-time facial recognition in public spaces.
Quite strict.
Very. And beyond AI, they have the Digital Markets Act, the Digital Services Act. They're trying to curb tech monopolies, give users more control over online content. They're even pushing manufacturing with the European Chips Act, aiming to double their share of global semiconductor production to 20% by 2030.
Okay, so very active, very regulatory. How does the U.S. compare? It's often seen as more hands-off.
Generally, yes. A light-touch approach is a good description. Companies largely drive development, trying to avoid what they see as burdensome regulation or barriers to innovation.
Right.
Data protection. It's fragmented state by state, though California's CCPA often acts like a sort of de facto national standard, and you have Section 230.
The law protecting platforms from liability for user content.
Exactly. Which often means less oversight of those powerful recommender algorithms deciding what you see online. But it's not all hands-off. The GPS and Science Act is a major industrial policy push.
To boost domestic chip production.
Right. Maintain U.S. tech leadership. And also create choke points like the NVIDIA chip export ban to China, trying to limit rivals' access to the most advanced semiconductors.
Okay. And then there's China. Their approach is usually quite different.
Very different. China's AI legislation is evolving fast, but it's heavily guided by the central government. They have their Personal Information Protection Law, PIPL, which requires data to be stored locally, for example.
And what's unique about their approach to algorithms?
This is really distinct. Right. They have these Internet Information Service algorithmic recommendation management provisions. Wow. It's not just about giving users rights. It actually requires platforms to actively promote positive information that follows the official line of the Communist Party.
Wow.
And regulate things like extravagance or political activism. AI there is often described as a social control tool. Think about the massive deployment of facial recognition cameras, 626 million by 2020. And they actively promote their national champions like Baidu, Alibaba, Huawei.
So these really different paths, EU, US, China, are leading to this technological decoupling you mentioned.
Yeah, that bifurcation of digital ecosystems. We see concrete examples. Huawei lost access to Android, so they developed their own Harmony OS. China's pushing to replace foreign PCs and operating systems with domestic ones like Kylin OS, or using Gitee instead of GitHub.
So separate digital worlds.
Increasingly so. It's not just about market share. It's fundamental differences in how technology is governed and used.
Yet, despite these really clear divisions, are there still efforts towards global collaboration on AI? Is it a complete breakdown?
No, not a complete breakdown. Collaboration attempts persist. You have things like the World Artificial Intelligence Conference, WAIC, in Shanghai. They stress the need for international cooperation, launch initiatives like a global AI governance rules map. And even within BRICS, there's an AI cooperation forum aiming for coordinated development among those members.
So what's really significant here for you, the listener, is understanding how the basic ideology of a nation shapes the future of the technology we all use.
Exactly. It has profound implications for your privacy, for innovation globally, and for the fundamental balance of global power. Think about it. Is your social media feed shaped by algorithms controlled by your government or by Silicon Valley?
Right. Will your data stay in your country or flow across borders? That's digital sovereignty in action, and it affects your daily digital life.
Absolutely.
Okay. Speaking of shifting power dynamics, let's zoom out again to the global stage. The BRICS coalition. This is rapidly reshaping the economic and political landscape, isn't it?
It really is. It's gone from being, kind of an ambiguous marketing term coined by an economist
Right, Goldman Sachs.
to a pretty significant political and economic force. And the expansion is a major part of that story now.
Tell us about that expansion. Who's in now?
Okay, so you had the original five: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Now, as of October 2024, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE joined. Then Indonesia came in January 2025.
So that makes 10 full members.
10 members. Plus, there are 9 official partner countries and maybe some 24 other nations that have either been invited or shown interest. It's growing fast.
And with that size comes influence, presumably.
Definitely. The expanded BRICS, plus OA, as it's sometimes called, now holds about 45% of the world's population.
Wow, almost half.
Yeah. It generates more than 35% of global GDP, if you measure by purchasing power parity, and produces 30% of the world's oil. These are significant figures.
Okay, so what's the core mission here? What are they trying to achieve with this bigger bloc?
Well, BRICS avowedly seeks to challenge Western-dominated institutions of global economic governance. That's a key goal.
Like the IMF, the World Bank.
Exactly. And also trying to displace the U.S. dollar from its entrenched role in the world economy. Russia especially has really pushed this narrative, saying the expansion heralds the dawn of a post-Western world order where the global majority finally gets empowered.
But it can't be a monolithic group, right? With 10 members plus partners, the motivations for joining must be pretty diverse.
Oh, absolutely. Very diverse. But there are common threads. A big one is the desire to, let's say, respond to and manage the consequences of American dominance.
How so?
Things like seeking safe harbor from U.S. diplomatic coercion and economic statecraft, like sanctions or tariffs. Getting development funding, maybe from the BRICS Bank, the NDB, without political conditions and in local currencies. And generally, just wanting greater decision-making power in multilateral forums than they feel they get in Western-led ones.
Okay, let's quickly touch on some key original members. Brazil. What's their angle?
Brazil seeks prestige, influence. It's also a way to manage its relationship with China, which is its biggest trading partner. And they value BRICS as a kind of mutual diplomatic support group, providing insurance against diplomatic isolation, like shielding Russia back in 2014.
But they don't want it to be too anti-Western.
Right. Brazil, especially as it takes the presidency in 2025, aims to stop the group becoming too anti-Western.
Yeah.
A balancing act.
Okay. Russia? Their motivation seems clearer, maybe?
Yeah. Russia clearly sees BRICS as a tool to make the world less U.S.-centric. It's a sandbox, as one source put it, for developing alternatives, trade, finance, investment tools outside U.S. systems, like alternatives to the SWIFT payment network, and just a way to maintain high-level contact when other doors are closed.
India, a stalwart member, but with its own complexities.
Definitely complex. India sees BRICS membership as important for status, for achieving multipolarity, for claiming leadership of the global south, demonstrating strategic autonomy. But they're ambivalent about more expansion, especially if it boosts China's influence too much.
To their rivalry with China.
Exactly. And they want to avoid Russia's level of confrontation with the West, so they avoid pushing hard on things like de-dollarization. It's a careful balancing act for India, too.
China obviously is a huge player here. What's their strategic view?
China sees BRICS as a strategic bridge, a way to harness and potentially shape the power of non-Western countries. It's a force multiplier for their global influence, a hedge against decoupling from the West. They focus on economics, finance, politics, security, and cultural exchanges.
And South Africa, the smallest economy of the original five.
South Africa uses BRICS to amplify its global influence, push for reforms at the UN, IMF, World Bank. They see the NDB, the BRICS Bank, as offering economic alternatives, and they position themselves as a gateway to Africa for trade and investment coming through the bloc.
Okay, now what about some of the newer members or countries interested? What draws them in? Egypt, for example.
Egypt is looking for financial and development aid from sources beyond the West. They want to expand trade using national currencies, especially with China. Basically, diversifying partnerships to avoid being, as one source said, at the mercy of the United States' whims.
Ethiopia.
Similar story. They see BRICS as crucial for developmental and financial assistance, without strings attached, and a way to elevate their voice globally, supporting their own economic reform agenda.
Indonesia. They seemed cautious at first.
They were, but ultimately joined. It's seen as strategic diversification. They want to leverage their size demographic, economic for trade, tech transfer, infrastructure. Their goal seems to be being everywhere, engaging with all major blocs.
And then you have Iran. Their motivation seems pretty clear.
Yes, Iran definitely sees BRICS as a geopolitical and economic counterweight to Western dominance. A key goal is to eliminate the dollar in trade. It also helps them diversify partnerships beyond just China and potentially expand military equipment trade.
But not all new members are necessarily joining to counter the West, the UAE.
Right. The UAE has been explicit that its membership is not intended as a counterweight to the United States or Western countries. They frame it more around expanding trade, attracting investment, accessing new markets, and strengthening multilateralism generally. Pragmatic diversification.
Okay, so we have all these different motivations from counterweight to diversification. What does this growing global majority within BRICS really mean for you, the listener?
Well, it raises this huge question. How will this evolving bloc impact international trade, global finance, geopolitics for all of us? Will it solidify into a coherent anti-Western bloc, as some fear or hope? Or will it remain more of a loose platform, a vehicle for countries to pursue reforms while still cooperating with the West?
The answer probably depends on which vision wins out within BRICS itself.
Exactly. Which vision of the future of world order ultimately wins out within BRICS?
Yeah.
That's the debate analysts are having right now.
Fascinating. Okay, this brings us nicely to our final segment. Let's focus on the African Union, its path towards integration, asserting its agency, and navigating all these external partnerships.
Right. The AU has come a long way institutionally. It plays a central role now in African foreign and security policy. Think of its Peace and Security Council, its peacekeeping missions.
And its relationship with external partners is key here, particularly the EU.
Yes, what's interesting is that even with more global players competing for influence in Africa, the EU's funding and cooperation mechanisms with the AU are still described as unrivaled. But
it's complicated.
It's complicated, multifaceted, sometimes conflictual.
So, significant support, but friction points too. What are they?
Well, there's a substantial historical asymmetry, let's be frank. And the AU is increasingly unwilling to tolerate any form of paternalism from the EU, even perceived paternalism.
Okay.
African partners often view EU political conditionalities, like tying aid to human rights performance, as a form of coercion.
Right.
And the war in Ukraine really exposed political differences and expectations. The AU largely took a principled stance based on a particular interpretation of non-alignment, even though there wasn't full consensus among members on, say, isolating Russia.
And to really understand the AU's path, we also need to look inward, right? There are internal challenges to its own integration goals.
Absolutely. It's not always a smooth road internally. There's constant friction between national sovereignty concerns and the AU's supranational ambitions. You have deep-seated divisions.
Like what?
For instance, the Big Six, Algeria, Angola, Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, South Africa, tend to favor an intergovernmental vision. They see the AU Commission more as a secretariat. Other members want a stronger, more centralized AU Commission with more power.
And then there's this concept of subsidiarity. What's that about?
That's about the balance of power within Africa between the continental AU and the regional blocs, the RECs like ECOLAs in West Africa or SADC in Southern Africa. Who does what?
And that's not always clear.
Not always. And things like ad hoc security groups, like the G5 Sahel formed outside the main AU structure, have sometimes compromised the ability of both RECs and AU in their pursuit of subsidiarity. They can draw away resources, especially EU funding, and raise questions about the AU's African solutions to African problems mantra.
Even on symbolic issues, there are divisions.
Deep divisions. Even the AU's stance on Palestine or Israel's observer status at the AU deeply divides AU member states.
So navigating this complex internal scene while also diversifying external partnerships, that's quite a balancing act.
It is. The AU is actively seeking diverse international partners, and yes, sometimes that happens to the EU's chagrin.
Meaning the EU isn't thrilled?
Well, the EU is the biggest financial donor, right? But sources say it's wary of the AU giving considerable visibility to non-Western partners who make smaller financial contributions, but gain significant geopolitical influence by doing so.
And Russia is definitely one of those players making inroads.
For sure. Russia leverages its Soviet Union's historical ties, pushes an anti-imperial narrative. President Putin even branded NATO states as colonial, a message that finds traction with some African youth movements.
Meanwhile, the AU itself is pushing for more sustainable funding, more agency.
Yes. They're strongly advocating for UN assessment manifest contributions to fund their peacekeeping operations. The goal is a more predictable, sustainable funding model that reduces dependence on external partners like the EU and gives the AAU more control, more agency.
And they want a bigger seat at the global table, too.
Clearly, the AAU wants a permanent seat or seats on the UN Security Council. France and Germany actually support the call for 2 permanent African seats.
Interesting.
And they also seek a permanent seat at the G20. The AU chair has been a permanently invited guest since 2013, but they want full membership, showing that growing assertiveness in global governance.
So what this really reveals, for you, the listener, is a continent actively asserting its agency. It's navigating its own internal complexities while strategically engaging with a whole range of global powers.
Yeah, it's fundamentally reshaping multilateralism. It's a powerful narrative of self-determination playing out on the world stage.
Wow, we've covered a ton of ground today.
We really have.
From the U.S. fiscal cliff and the crossroads on climate policy to the global scramble over AI governance, the big shifts with BRICS expansion and the African Union carving out its path.
And the key takeaway is how interconnected it all is.
Exactly. These aren't isolated stories. They're threads in this larger tapestry of global reordering.
And as nations increasingly chase things like digital sovereignty or pursue these multi-aligned foreign policy strategies, moving away perhaps from the kind of global interoperability we maybe took for granted, it raises this really important question for all of us. What are the ultimate implications for international cooperation, for stability?
Right. Will this lead to more fragmentation, a less connected world, or could it, maybe surprisingly, pave the way for new kinds of alliances, maybe new forms of global governance we haven't even thought of yet?
It's something to really mull over.
Definitely something to mull over as you navigate the world around you. We really encourage you, our listener, to keep exploring these issues, because these huge macro-level shifts, they will undoubtedly ripple down and impact your own life, your industry, your community in ways both big and small.